The Life of Augusta Erickson, written by Vera Veteto, dated August 9, 1994. Augusta Eleanor Dietrich Erickson was born in Passewalk, Germany in Pommern region, February 22, 1868. Her father's name was Christian Dietrich, and her mother's name was Caroline Grabeau. She was baptized in the State Lutheran Church. Her father, an ex-soldier, having fought in the French-Prussian War, was a good man of medium height and was employed by the government railroad. He came from a famous German family who were of nobility. He always wore his railroad uniform, was a good provider, and was stern with his children. His mother died when he was young and a sister raised him. Her mother's people were poor and worked for a large estate. Her mother was tall with dark brown hair. When Augusta Dietrich was a child, she remembers roasting coffee in a drum in the fireplace. One day when she came home from school, she saw the coffee roasting in a drum and gave the drum a turn. This spilled some of the coffee in the fireplace and made a blaze. Feeling frightened, she ran outside. When her father came into the room, he said, "I'll bet Augusta did that." Augusta denied it, but telling the untruth bothered her conscience into her later life, so that later when she came to America, she wrote a letter home telling her parents that it was she who had burned the coffee. The family lived near the Ecker River that emptied into the Elbe. There was a man on every street corner calling, "Fresh fish." It was the custom to never buy a fish unless it was alive. Augusta was the eldest daughter, and when she reached the age of 17, she decided to go to America. Her father arranged to get a free pass from Berlin to Bremerhaven for her. The last thing that she remembered of her mother was seeing her lying on the bed crying when she left. The adventure of crossing the ocean was enjoyable. On the boat she got acquainted with a German lady who made her feel at home. The boat landed in Baltimore, Maryland. In America she stayed with her mother's sister, a Mrs. Kaiso, who lived at Altamont, Illinois. This aunt had a daughter, Marie, who lived out in the country from Altamont, Illinois. Augusta went to work for a German woman with one child and later worked for a lawyer's family, but was so homesick that she had to go back to her aunt's home. She could still remember crying, "Oh, mother, mother." Later she went to work for the Pringles, a family who became very dear to her. The man who became her husband lived near the Pringles with his Aunt Carrie. Peter Charles Erickson had lived a lonely, fatherless life and was a persistent suitor to the pretty German girl. On December 31, 1891, they were married in the English Lutheran Church in Springfield, Illinois. When they were married, Peter Erickson worked in a factory as an engineer. Her husband found it difficult to settle down in supporting his family, and much of the time, life was not easy for his growing family. The two eldest boys worked to help the family when they were still very little boys of 8 and 10 years of age, carrying papers and gathering up coal that had dropped off the coal cars for the family to use for fuel. In about 1910, the family moved to Eureka, California. The father and the oldest son, George, had gone on ahead to find employment, so by the time that this brave mother had reached San Francisco, she was in tears with worry, for fear that her husband would not be there to meet her, for there were 2 depots in San Francisco. However, just by chance, Peter had come to the right depot with another man to meet his wife, so luckily, he was there to help his tired little family home. By this time there were 5 living children, 3 boys and 2 girls. One son, Walter, had died from diphtheria when he was 6 years old. The children were named George, John, Walter, Grace, Mabel, and Albert. In Metropolitan, the family found more happiness than they had ever known before. They had a really nice house to live in, lots of room to play, and good children to play with. Their father's job didn't work out to his satisfaction, though. So once more the family was uprooted, and from there they moved to Portland, Oregon. Most of Augusta's married life saw her husband working away from home. When the family moved to Portland, Oregon, however, it was their last move. After raising her family, the youngest son Albert lost his wife, so Augusta raised Albert's only child, a daughter, Maxine Esther Erickson, and it was with this son that she has spent her twilight years. Augusta Eleanor Dietrich Erickson was never blessed with any earthly possessions, but her brave decision to come to this land of freedom has given her descendants a rich heritage indeed. She was a true pioneer. May her descendants always live worthily to enjoy the many blessings that her sacrifice has brought. The following was written by Martha Dietrich in about 1961 to Augusta Erickson's children. Martha was the wife of Augusta Erickson's brother Otto, and she wrote a letter from Germany to the family, describing the event of Augusta leaving Germany for America at the age of 17. My dears, coming back to your letter, which did not take long to reach us, written to Ella, Irene, and Richard, I had the privilege to read it on the second Easter day, and it prompts me in connection with it to make connection with you. Once each month I am invited to a noonday meal, and then I remain until the evening. Now we found time to converse, and our thoughts were wandering over land and sea to Portland. Your ears must be ringing, my dears. You cannot picture the great joy over the letter and the pictures, for which we thank you heartily. Again and again we looked at the pictures through the magnifying glass and studied your dear countenances, and we tried to imagine who has the most identity. There is Augusta, your dear mother. She and Grandma Dietrich are just hewn out of each other's likeness. I had to tell the others, so I have pictured them in my mind, because in my youth I saw pictures of Augusta. That is a presence of grace, and how thankful I am that I could get acquainted with her in the picture. The color of the eyes, her dear facial expressions, and the peaceful smile. On the contrary, Grandma Dietrich had always heavy eyes, and she looked as though she had been crying or was sorrowful. In youth one has little understanding for that or what caused it, but when one gets older and our pilgrim sojourn nears the end, we also shall soon depart from this earth, one looks at life with spiritual eyes. Now I realize more and more the connection between both mother and daughter. I took retrospection. All my remembrances began to get life in me, and in my thoughts I wandered a whole stretch of the way backwards. In the years 1913, 1914, and 1915, I read many letters from Augusta, but those dated again back from the years 1890, 1891, 1892, and up to 1896, etc. She must have departed Germany in the year 1887. Grandma Dietrich mentioned it at that time. Her brother, Augusta's uncle, who emigrated and lived in Chicago or Michigan, at the place where he lived he presented his church with an organ. According to our estimation, he was quite well off. This uncle had her come over. Her second oldest brother, Otto, my husband, has often spoken of her departure. The children were still small. All were gathered about her suitcases, and one cried more than the other, but most of all the mother, as Augusta said, "Don't make my departure unnecessarily heavy." It touched us very much, as it was so sad, as she only was a child, not even 17 years old. From all of her letters we could still read her homesickness. Oh dear mother, sweet words, how long has your voice not sounded on my ear? In each letter she mentioned she would have the whole family come over, but Father Dietrich had no ear for that, because he loved his home as much as we love it today. Mother Dietrich suffered because of it all her life, and she suffered heavily because of the distance between up until her old age. As Augusta was standing on the street corner on her wedding day, there were horse-drawn taxis on rubber wheels passing by, but this day caused her many tears because none of her loved ones were there. She also sent the newspaper clipping along, which was translated at that time by a former acquaintance into the German language. Yes, and all that one life has spent itself and has gone to its end. Now I have torn up old wounds that had healed long ago, but it is nice to talk about times past. It was once just like a fairy tale that has been long gone. Just now I recall our former pastor Wagner, shortly after Augusta left, saying to Father Dietrich once, "You have a daughter of God's grace." She was my best confirmation pupil. Has she kept herself in his grace and took power from the fountain? Then she had no bitter thoughts arising in her heart, but she overpowered in him who has promised, "Come unto me all ye that are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Even though she had to miss her parents' home in early youth, still it was granted her to spend life's evening with her children. Oh, what great blessings has your mother left behind! Such riches in children and children's children. And in your thoughts she has erected a lasting monument of love. In the sunlight of her family, all suffering and heartache was pushed into the background, even though she did not forget, but she conquered in him who said, "Lo, I am with you always until the end of the earth." The good Lord gave her long life far above the biblical measure. Psalms 90 verse 10, and she lives again in spirit and in word in the minds of her children.